Hi, I'm Danny, and today I have my September and October wrap up. So for September and October, I chose to do a Halloweeny reads month, well more like 2 months, because I started September, read all the way through October, and I gotta say at the end of October I was finding myself burnt out of supernatural creatures, because normally I read a lot of fantasy and then I'll read a little bit of paranormal stuff in between those books, because those are like my two favorite, fantasy and supernatural stuff. But I found myself getting pretty burnt out of supernatural stuff at the end of October. I think the last few days of October I didn't read anything. Like, I think like the 28th through the 31st I read like nothing, because I felt kind of slumpy, and I'm still feeling a little bit like that. So hopefully that's not how I end out this year, because I headed towards the beginning of the year and I don't want it for the end of the year. So let's get started with the books that I read in September and October. First, I read Queen Takes Night by Jolie Sue Burkhardt. I've read this book multiple times and I've talked about it multiple times on this channel. I can't think of what videos those were though. So starts off with Queen Takes Night. This is about Shara, who finds out that she is a lost vampire queen, and she finds out that from these two men called Her Blood, which are kind of like basically like vampire knights, that she is a lost queen, and they help her find the people in charge of her legacy, meaning kind of like her inheritance of her power and her family's money, and she starts building her queendom from there. I gave this a 3-star rating, good start of a series. Then I read Queen Takes King, second book in the series, where Shara finds out about a very rare king that is born once every 1,000 years, who is in prison, who she is supposed to save and make one of her bloods, her vampire knights. And kings are like a very scary thing, because queens are like, they are like the matriarchs of their family. They are the all-powerful, the one that everyone looks up to for direction. But kings are very volatile. They usually, by the time they come into their power in adulthood, they end up going crazy with the power and either banished or end up killing their entire families because they cannot control these powers. I gave this one also a 3-star rating. Next, I read Queen Takes Queen, the third book in the series, but not my favorite of the series. Queen Takes Queen is Shara meeting Queen Zanaya, the Queen of New Mexico or Mexico, I can't remember. I believe it's Mexico. And like I said, this one wasn't my favorite in the series, because there was a bit of manipulation at the end of this book that I thought just didn't feel right. But it was still a pretty good book for the series, just not my favorite. Next is Queen Takes Rook. This is Shara finally going up against Queen Sky, who is like a very sadistic, almost evil queen in herself. As you find out more about this queen, you sort of understand why she does the things she does, though it definitely does not make them right. And you find out how powerful Shara really is, and if she can go up against another queen and win. Spoiler alert, she wins. And I actually gave this one a 3.5 star. So this one was better than most of the books in the series. But overall, I would have to say I would give that series a 4-star rating. Most of the books are average, kind of 3 stars, but I'd say they're definitely like more 3.5s. But Queen Takes Rook, I'd say, is probably the closest to a 4-star. But overall, from what I've read of the series so far, I would give it a 4-star rating because, well, I've read it multiple times. Next, I read Goddess of Light by PC Cass. This has to do with Apollo. I'm standing on my shoes. So this starts off with the gods in Olympus, which is something you really don't see much in this book. There'll be a mention of the gods in Olympus, and maybe you might get a glimpse of the gods in Olympus, but a good chunk of this book actually does take place on Olympus. And so this has to do with Apollo. All the gods have finally decided that they are going to take a vacation to the mortal realm and see how mortals live and interact with modern mortals, and, you know, kind of see how the other half lives, I guess. And in this book, Apollo and Artemis decide that they are going to go to the kingdom, or the city of Las Vegas, and spend their time there. While they are there, they end up getting trapped in the mortal realm, and they have to sort of stick with this woman named, what was her name? This woman named Pamela, who is sort of kind of Apollo's girlfriend, I guess you could say. and she's dealing with finding out that these two people are gods, her kind of thinking maybe Apollo was manipulating me and making me feel these emotions for him. And Artemis also finds someone along the way from her past. And it is a nice story. Definitely not my favorite in this series. I think I would give this a 2.5 star. Definitely not as great as the other books in this series. So 2.5, 3 star if I'm generous. T. Next, I read Her Demon Harem by Savannah Sky. This was beyond basic. This is a reverse harem story, kind of like the Vampire Queen series that I just talked about. And this had bits and pieces of a bunch of other reverse harem books that I've read in this one book, which a lot of them do have kind of like a basic kind of theme. You know, it's a girl fighting a group of guys. Something happens, whether that be everyday things or supernatural things or fantasy things. And then, of course, they end up in bed together and they all end up in a relationship. Whether that relationship will have issues because there are multiple people in it or not depends on the story and the author. This one had that. Not a whole lot of issues except for the main character, who was kind of naive and just very naive. But like I said, this had a whole bunch of other reverse harem story themes in it that I've seen in other stories, but it did not do them well. I gave this a 1-star rating, and I have no interest of ever picking this up or ever reading any of the other books ever. Started to read Undead and Unreturnable and realized I've already read it recently, so I don't have the next one. I tried to get it from the library, but I was like number 3 on the rating list, so I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I moved on to the next book on my TBR. Next, I read The Merciless by Danielle Vega. I've had book 2 on my TBR for a while, so I got book 1 for my birthday last year, I think, and I was disappointed. There's no other way to say it, just disappointed. It was somewhat what I thought it was going to be, although I thought that the escape would try to take place much earlier in the book, so that, I don't know, the girl who was tortured, if she was possessed by a demon, would come after the girls who tortured her through the rest of the book. A lot of that, what I expected, did not happen. Some of the things I expected did happen. But I don't know if I'll read book 2 at this point. I gave this a 2.5 star. Wasn't scary at all, kind of creepy, bit suspenseful, not scary at all. And I'd heard that this is absolutely terrified people and gave them nightmares. So I expected, you know, at least a little creepiness, that I would be at least, like, my heart rate would pick up a bit. While it was a little suspenseful, definitely wouldn't say it's scary. So if you're going to this hoping to be frightened and you like grew up on horror movies, you probably won't be scared at all, because that was me. I lived on horror movies growing up. Didn't scare me at all. Not a bit. So 2.5 star. Not sure if I'll read book 2. Next, this book is, I actually should have put this much earlier in the video, but it was at the bottom of the list. It was at the bottom of the stack. But I have The Silver Witch by Paula Brixton. Let's see, pretty cover. So I read this in the beginning of September, and that's how I managed to get 2 more books by her in my birthday TBR, in my birthday wish list. So if you want to see my birthday book haul, I'll link that in the description below, along with all of these other books. They're linked to Goodreads, so if you want to see those. So this is about our main character, I can't remember her name, Tilda. So this is about our main character, Tilda. She is an albino woman who has just lost her husband, just as they were planning to move up to somewhere, an isolated Welsh cottage. Now that I think about it, I don't think they named the town. So they were planning to move to this little Welsh cottage. They had just bought it, were planning to move in, and then they get into a car accident and he dies. So she's moving into this cabin in this very little town all by herself, which she was supposed to move into with her husband. So a lot of it is her grieving, learning to adjusting to this small town, because I believe she used to like live in the city. And so of course that's a huge adjustment because the electricity really won't work. Much smaller town. There's not really any stores around you could get to without a car. And as she gets to the town, she ends up saving this dog from these two guys. Who were like, they were like trying to beat the dog to death. I felt so bad for that dog. And those are the things that'll get me. If you want to make me cry, show me an animal being abused and you've got me right there. That's all I need, and I will bawl. And I was listening to the audiobook at the time, driving. I'm like, okay, don't cry. You can't cry right here, right now. You are literally on the freeway. You cannot cry here. I mean, if I was in traffic, then probably, yeah. But I was on the freeway, so I have no time to rub tears out of my eyes. I will die. So now she has a new companion as a dog. She starts having these weird experiences, like the electricity won't work. When the electrician shows up, he says everything's fine, nothing's the problem, and then the second he leaves, everything dies again. So things like that keep constantly happening to her. And then she starts having these weird visions of this woman that looks similar to her, as in white hair, white skin, pink eyes, because like I said, she is albino. And she starts learning that there is a connection between them. And I gotta say, I guessed pretty early on what the connection would be. But I really, really enjoyed this book. A lot of it is slow paced, everyday stuff. Though there are times where weeks will pass at a time before the story will skip weeks at a time. That's what I should have said. The story will skip weeks at a time. And so you'll go from the beginning of September to the middle of September or the end of September, depending on how long it takes for this person to connect these things or for more visions to come along. But the story isn't just told from our main character's point of view. You actually get a flash. You will see the past from this woman named Saren, and she's actually a Welsh witch. And you find out the connection between them, and throughout this, and then at certain parts of the story, they actually kind of sort of interact with each other almost. And things from the past actually end up connecting with things with the present, and you find out what the connection between these two characters is. But I really enjoyed the story. Like I said, it was very slow paced, which I really don't like a lot of slow paced books, but this one was excellent, and I cannot wait to read more of her books. Of course, like I've already said, I've already ordered them, got them for my birthday, and I really can't wait to get to them. Next time I feel like a witchy read, I know who I'm reaching for. But I believe I gave this a near 4-star rating, like 3.7, but really close to a 4-star rating. So if you're looking for a good witchy read or a good slow paced book, this is definitely the book for you. I think this is definitely the book. So don't go into this expecting a whole bunch of fast-paced, cauldron stirring. It's not that kind of witch book, but it's still really good. I enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read more from her. And I also have another book that I read earlier on in September. So Capturing the Devil is the final book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Carrie Maniscalco. And this was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I don't know what I can say about this book that isn't a spoiler. There's almost nothing I can say about this book other than the fact that Audrey Rose and Thomas are on the trail of another serial killer, and the relationship is developing, and a lot of drama happens, and there are some scandalous moments for the time period definitely in this book. Like, if someone from that time period had read this book, oh, they would have died of shock. But it was really good. Not as great as I was hoping it would be for a final book, but it was still really good, and I enjoyed it. Loved spending more time with Audrey Rose and Thomas, and I have no doubt I will read this book, this series again. I'm actually getting my mother to read it now, because I've talked about it before. Finding books for my mother to read is extremely difficult. She's very picky, but I've noticed I've gotten her to read like books about serial killers, and especially historical reads. Like, I think the first one I got her to listen to audiobooks. That's the only thing she'll listen to is audiobooks. I've got her to listen to the Illuminae Files, and then another book about this pregnant girl in an asylum who becomes like kind of a Watson to this detective Sherlock Holmes, and this series. She's read book 1, 2, she just finished book 3, and she just started this one. She's about not halfway through, but a good amount through, and I have no idea what her next one's gonna be. I have absolutely no idea what her next one will be. But like I said, if she enjoys this series, pretty much anyone can. So it did go up and down, and there's a part in this book where Audrey Rose actually meets the killer, even though she doesn't realize it. And I'm like, oh, that's him. I know it's him. I know it. That's the way Carrie mind work. I know that's the killer. And I was right. And then when she meets the killer again, I was kind of like, that's him. That's him right there. Though it did take me a while to realize historically who the killer was. Like, if you look at all her books, all of them have at least one famous person in them. There was Jack the Ripper and Stalking Jack the Ripper. There was Dracula and Hunting Prince Dracula, although you don't see Dracula, you know, it's a vampire theme. There was Houdini and Escaping from Houdini, and Capturing the Devil. Well, I can't tell you who the famous person was, but if you've read the book, you know who it is, and it made complete sense. I don't know why it didn't click for me earlier, but yeah. So I really enjoyed the book. Really close to a 4-star, but not quite there, but I still really enjoyed this. Next, I read The Last Necromancer by C.J. Archer. This is the Ministry of Curiosities book 1. This is about a girl masquerading as a boy, so kind of a Milan thing, though that's ended like pretty early in the book. It's figured out that she is a girl, and she is thrown into prison with these, I have no words for other than monstrous men who are planning to rape her, or him, as they believed at the time. But through one of the other prisoners kind of trying to protect Charlie. Charlie is our main character. That's her boy name. Her name is Charlotte, but of course she goes as Charlie, so it works for a guy or a girl. So in trying to protect Charlie, this prisoner is killed, and Charlie mentions this talent that she hasn't used in years, and so she brings him back to the life because Charlie is a necromancer. And she uses this man to get her out of prison, to scare the guards into unlocking the door, and to get the prisoners off her back. She escapes, and this gets like spreads around really quickly. So this ministry that is in charge of curious things such as, well, necromancers and other paranormal things, they are in charge of like kind of keeping them under check. So making sure like no necromancer is trying to raise all of the corpses in London to take over London or anything like that. So they find out about this doctor who is looking for a necromancer to bring his creations to life. This doctor is Dr. Frankenstein, which I did not see coming. I expected some sort of doctor, but did not expect Frankenstein. But it was pretty good. You find out more about Charlie and her powers, and Charlie ends up getting all these different offers, which I would say, okay, take that one, girl. That's a good one. It would keep you safe in a pretty wealthy household. But Charlie just would not take them, and she was so stubborn. She even ended up back on the streets because she refused to help the ministry. But of course, she learns the error of her ways, and you find out that the guy that she's now working for is not a very nice man. You know, he's moral in some ways, but he doesn't mind going like the dirty routes to get what he needs done. And so, yeah. But I did like this one. I give this a 3-star rating, and I do want to read on with this series. Next, I have Her Majestys Necromancer by C.J. Archer. This is the second book in the Ministry of Curiosities series. I didn't finish this one. I don't know why. I think I was maybe about halfway through when I just kind of like lost interest in it. I don't know if it's because, like I said, throughout October I started just kind of not wanting to read the supernatural books anymore. Every book I would reach for that was outside of my pick TBR, I would say, okay, I'm gonna read this. It's a fantasy. God dang it. I said only paranormal, supernatural, Halloween-y books. So this is one of those books that I lost interest in, and so I DNF this, but I will continue reading this at a later date when I'm in the mood. But what I read of this one, I would give it a 3-star rating. So next I did a Goodreads poll, and I wanted people's opinion on which book I should have read next. And it was between Toil and Trouble, which I've already read, so this would have been a reread, and The Wicked Deep. Almost everybody but like 20 people chose The Wicked Deep. So I was like, okay, so this one's got to be really good. And I've heard great things about it, and I've been wanting to read it for a while, and I wanted to wait for Halloween. So I decided to read it now. And it was good. For a good chunk of this was a really good book. Especially with like the whole local lore and things. Like where I am, there's really no local lore. There's no like ghost that's haunting a certain house or anything like that. So I like books like this, where there's a town with local lore and a legend that's been ingrained in them so deep that everybody knows it's true. And that's what a good chunk of this was. And everything I expected to happen did not happen, or did not happen when I think it was going to happen. But the end kind of fell flat for me. You know, like I expected this to happen, and it either didn't happen until like halfway or to the end, or I expected this to happen and this didn't happen at all. And our main character, I had two theories. One, she was either possessed by a swan sister, or two, someone really close to her was possessed and she just wouldn't see it. One of those things did happen. I won't say which, for those of you who have not read this. So I really did enjoy this. Like if the ending had been different, I think I could have given this a 4-star rating. But because that ending really fell flat for me, I had to give this a 3-star rating. And I'm not sure. I've heard that they're supposed to be a sequel of this. And from the way it ended, it did feel like there could be a sequel. So I'm not sure if it just took a while to come out, or if it was unplanned and they just decided to write a sequel. I'm not sure. And I don't know what it's about at this time. But I haven't decided whether or not I'll read it yet. But like I said, I did give this a 3-star rating. And on to the next book. This is I have Grave Witch by Pollyanna Price. This is another sort of necromancy book, but this is more of a urban paranormal fantasy kind of. It's about Alex, who is a grave witch, meaning she can bring a shade back of a person who has recently died. So, but they're kind of like recordings. So they can only say certain things about what happened around their time of death, but Alex believes that she will be able to bring a sentient shade back, one that can interact with people, to testify at her own murder trial to say who murdered her. And the story was good up until that point, where she actually brought the person back and they testify, and it went great. After that, the story really went downhill for me. But I really didn't enjoy this one. I only got less than halfway through this book. And what I did read of it, I would say is a 2.5. Next, I read The Babysitters Coven by Kate Williams. Now, this one was a pretty good book. This is the author's debut book, and it just came out in September or beginning of October. I can't remember which. But I thought it was pretty good, and I definitely want to see what this author comes out with next. This is about our main character, Esme, who is part of a babysitting club, and then strange things starts to happen, and then she finds a connection that to her current babysitting club that her mom also had, and then she starts to learn that she has powers, and well, then they create a coven. But it was pretty good, light and fluffy, not a whole bunch of heavy subjects other than, you know, kids being kidnapped. Other than that, it was a very light book, and I did enjoy this one. I gave this a 3.5-star rating. And last but not least, I read Queen Takes Checkmate. This is the most current book in the Vampire Queen series by Jolie Sue Burkhart, and this continues on with Shara after she has conquered the Sky Court, and she is now sort of kind of breaking it down and building it back up to what she wants it to be. So it's very much kind of government-y. You know, of course, Sky would let her people torment all the people below them. And of course, Shara doesn't want that at all. So she has to kind of break that down, kick the people out that she does not want there, or people who want to leave that no longer want to be there, and build her court up literally from the ground. But she does not want to live in this court because she wants to stay at her mansion in something Springs. Wherever her mansion is, she wants to stay there, but the Sky's court is still hers, which means she also has to find a minor queen to rule over it while she's at her home, and someone she believes will not abuse it. I gave this one a 3.5-star rating. So that is my September and October wrap up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!